The shuttle was falling apart around Commander Alara-chun, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Warning lights flashed red across every screen in the cockpit, and the computer voice kept repeating the same terrible words over and over again. Critical. Failure in primary thrusters. Navigation systems offline. Impact in 4 minutes. Alara pulled hard on the control stick and tried to angle the dying ship toward the snow-covered valley below her. But the shuttle barely responded to her commands anymore. She was going to crash on Velrith 4, a frozen world at the very edge of Consortium space, where temperatures dropped so low that exposed skin would freeze in minutes. This was supposed to be a simple survey mission. Just a quick scan of the planet's surface, and then back to the main ship waiting in orbit. But something had gone wrong with the shuttle engines, and now she was plummeting through thick gray clouds toward a world of ice and stone. Mayday. Mayday, mayday. She called into the communication system. This is Commander Alara-chun of the survey vessel Horizon. I am going down on Velrith 4. Requesting immediate rescue. Static was the only answer she received. The communication array must have been damaged too, which meant her distress signal might not even reach her. Ship in orbit, Alara braced herself as the shuttle broke through the clouds, and she saw the ground rushing up to meet her. Mountains of black rock covered in snow surrounded a narrow valley, and she aimed for the flattest area she could find. The impact was violent, and terrible metal screamed as the shuttle tore across the frozen ground, and Alara was thrown against her, restrained so hard that she felt something snap in her left leg. Pain exploded through her body, and she screamed as the shuttle finally came to a stop, half buried in a snowdrift at the base of a cliff. For a long moment she just sat there, breathing hard, trying to understand that she was still alive. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead, and her leg was twisted at an angle that made her stomach turn with nausea. But she was alive. The cockpit was filling with smoke from burning circuits, and she knew she had to get out before the whole shuttle caught fire. Alara released her restraints and immediately collapsed when she tried to stand on her broken leg. She screamed again and grabbed onto the pilot's seat, pulling herself toward the emergency hatch. Every movement sent waves of agony through her body, but she kept going because the alternative was burning to death inside a metal coffin. She hit the emergency release, and the hatch blew open, letting in a blast of freezing air that stole the breath from her lungs. The cold was beyond anything she had ever experienced. Alara dragged herself out of the shuttle and fell into snow that came up to her waist. Her environmental suit had been torn during the crash, and she could feel the killing cold seeping through the gaps in the fabric. She looked around and saw nothing but white snow and gray sky and black mountains in every direction. No buildings, no lights, no sign of civilization anywhere. The Kurreks had settlements on this world. She knew that from the mission briefing, but she had no idea how far away they might be. Her emergency beacon was in a pouch on her belt, and she pulled it out with shaking hands. The small device was cracked, and when she pressed the activation button, nothing happened. She pressed it again and again, but the beacon remained dark and silent. No, 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 she whispered, her voice breaking with despair. Without the beacon, there was no way for anyone to find her. Her ship in orbit would know that something had gone wrong when she failed to return. But Velrith 4 was a large world, and searching for one crashed shuttle could take days or even weeks. She would be dead from the cold long before anyone found her. Alara looked at the shuttle behind her and saw flames beginning to lick out from the broken hull. She could not stay here. She had to find shelter, or she would freeze to death in the open with her broken leg dragging uselessly behind her. Alara began to crawl through the snow toward a rocky Outcropping at the base of the cliff. Every meter was torture, and she left a trail of red blood on the white snow as she moved. The cold was already making her fingers numb, and her thoughts were becoming slow and fuzzy around the fuzzy edges. She thought about her daughter Maya back on Earth, only 12 years old and waiting for her mother to come home. She thought about the promise she had made to be there for Maya's birthday next month. She thought about all the things she still wanted to do and see and experience, but the cold was so heavy and her body was so tired, and the rocky outcropping still seemed so far away. Elara collapsed face first into the snow and could not find the strength to lift herself up again. This is how I die, she thought. Alone and frozen on a world far from home. The snow was almost comfortable now, like a cold blanket wrapping around her body. She knew that was a bad sign, that her body was shutting down, but she could not make herself care anymore. Her eyes drifted closed and she let the darkness take her. She did not see the small cave hidden in the rocks just 20 meters away. She did not see the 3 pairs of glowing eyes watching her from the shadows. She did not hear the soft chirping voices speaking in a language she would not have understood anyway. "What is that creature?" the smallest one asked, her voice trembling with fear. "I think it is a human," the eldest answered, her golden eyes wide with wonder and terror. "I have seen pictures in the learning tablets. Humans are dangerous," the middle one said. "Mother told us to stay away from them." "This one does not look dangerous," the eldest replied, watching the strange alien lying motionless in the snow. "This one looks like it is dying." The 3 Karak's cubs huddled together in their cave, too afraid to move, too curious to look away. They did not know it yet, but the decision they made in the next few minutes would change the course of history for 2 entire species. And somewhere in the frozen sky above them, a ship was already beginning its search for the lost human pilot who had vanished into the endless white. Saya was the eldest of the 3 cubs, and at 6 cycles old she was supposed to be the responsible one. She was supposed to keep her younger cousin safe, and she was supposed to make good decisions. And she was supposed to follow the rules that the elders had taught them. But right now she was hiding in a cave during a terrible blizzard with 2 frightened cubs and a dying alien creature lying in the snow. Outside, this was not how the day was supposed to go, and it started so simply that morning when Saya had convinced Tiru and little Mika to explore the valley beyond the settlement walls. "We will only go a little way," she had promised them. "We will be back before anyone notices we are gone." But then the storm had come faster than anyone expected, and suddenly they could not see the path back home. They had wandered for hours, getting more and more lost, until they found this small cave in the rocks and decided to wait for the storm to pass. And then the sky had torn open with fire and thunder, and something had fallen from the clouds and crashed into the valley floor. "What do we do?" Mika whispered, pressing her small furry body against Saya's side. "Should we help it?" "Humans are dangerous," Tiru said again, his orange fur standing up with fear. "Everyone knows this. The teachers say that humans come from a death world where everything tries to kill them. They say humans can survive things that would kill any other species. They say humans are unpredictable and violent." Saya knew all of these stories because she had heard them her whole life. The Karaks had fought a war with humans once, many cycles before Saya was born. The border conflicts, they called it. A terrible time when Karaks warriors had met human soldiers in battle. The story said that humans refused to die even when they should have, that they kept fighting with wounds that would have killed any Karaks, that they protected each other with a ferocity that was both terrifying and strange. The stories also said that when the war ended, the humans had shown mercy to their defeated enemies. which confused the Kuriks because showing mercy to the weak was not something their culture understood. Humans were a mystery wrapped in fear, and the elders taught all cubs to be careful around them. But this human did not look dangerous at all. This human looked small and broken, and alone. She is bleeding, Saya said softly, watching the red stains spreading in the snow around the creature. If we do not help her, she will die. That is not our problem, Tiru argued, but his voice was uncertain. We should stay hidden until the storm passes and then go home. What if it was one of us lying out there? Mika asked in her tiny voice. What if we were the ones who were hurt and alone? Would you want someone to help us? Tiru did not answer because he knew what the answer should be. The Kurik's way was clear on this matter. The weak did not survive. That was the natural order of things, and interfering with it was considered foolish. A true Kuriks would leave the dying human and focus on their own survival. But Saya had never been very good at being a true Kuriks. She was always asking questions that made the elders uncomfortable, always wondering why things had to be done a certain way just because that was how they had always been done. And right now, looking at the still form in the snow, she felt something in her chest that she could not ignore. It was not logical, and it was not practical, and it certainly was not the Kurik's way, but it was there anyway. A pull toward the suffering creature. A need to do something to help. I am going out there, Saya announced, standing up on her 4 legs. You can stay here if you want, but I cannot just watch her die. Saya, no. Tiru grabbed her tail with his teeth. It is too dangerous. What if she wakes up and attacks you? Look at her, Tiru, Saya said gently. She cannot attack anyone. She can barely breathe. She pulled free from her cousin's grip and padded out into the howling wind. The cold hit her like a physical blow, and she gasped as it cut through her fur. But she kept moving, pushing through the deep snow until she reached the humans. Sight up close, the creature was even stranger than she had expected. It had almost no fur except for the dark strands on top of its head. Its skin was a pale pinkish color, and its face was flat with a small nose and thin lips that had turned blue from the cold. Its eyes were closed, and frost was forming on its eyelashes. Saya had never seen anything so alien and so fragile. She pressed her ear against the human's chest and heard a heartbeat, slow and weak, but still there. She is alive, Saya called back to the cave. Help me drag her inside. For a long moment nothing happened, and Saya thought her cousins would abandon her to this task alone. But then Tiru appeared at her side, his ears flat against his head with fear, but his jaw set with determination. This is a terrible idea, he said as he grabbed the human's sleeve in his teeth. I know, Saya agreed, taking hold of the other sleeve. Now pull. Together they dragged the human through the snow while Mika ran ahead to clear a path. It was hard work, and the human was much heavier than they expected, but finally they managed to get her into the cave and out of the killing. When the human made a soft sound when they moved her, something between a moan and a whimper, and Saya felt her heart twist with sympathy. She is so cold, Mika said, pressing her paw against the human's face. She feels like ice. We need to warm her up, Tiru said, his earlier fear giving way to practical concern. I remember what Mother does when someone gets too cold. We need to share body heat. It was a good idea, and Saya was proud of her cousin for thinking of it. She curled up against the human's side and felt the terrible chill radiating from the alien body. Tiru pressed against the human's other side while Mika, brave little Mika, climbed right onto the human's chest and settled there like a small furry blanket. What do we do now? Mika asked, her big eyes shining in the dim light of the cave. We wait, Saya answered. We keep her warm and we wait for help to come. She did not know if help would come for any of them. She did not know if the human would survive the night. She did not know what the elders would say when they discovered what she had done. But she knew that she had made the right choice, the only choice that her heart would allow. And as the storm raged outside and the temperature continued to drop, 3 Kurix cubs pressed their small warm bodies against a dying human stranger and refused to let go. The night stretched on forever, and the storm showed no signs of stopping. Saya lay pressed against the human side, listening to the slow rhythm of the alien heartbeat, counting each breath as if her own life depended on it. Maybe it did in a way if this human died. After all their efforts, then something inside Saya would break, and she was not sure it would ever heal again. The cave was small, but it protected them from the worst of the wind and the combined body heat of 4 creatures was slowly raising the temperature. Tiru had found some dry moss in the back of the cave and arranged it around them for extra insulation. Mika had not moved from her position on the human's chest, her small body rising and falling with each of the human's labored breaths. "Do you think she has a family?" Mika asked softly, breaking the silence that had settled over them. "Everyone has a family," Saya replied. "Even aliens. I hope her family knows she is okay," Mika said. "I hope they are not too worried about her." Saya thought about her own parents back in the settlement. By now they would have noticed that the 3 cubs were missing. By now there would be search parties forming and elders arguing about the best way to find them. Her mother would be frantic with worry, and her father would be pretending to be calm while his tail twitched with barely controlled fear. She felt guilty for causing them such pain, but she could not regret coming out here. Not when it meant saving this strange creature's life. The human stirred suddenly, making a sound that was almost like words. Her eyes flickered open for just a moment, and Saya found herself staring into the most unusual eyes she had ever seen. They were round, instead of slitted like Kurix eyes, and they were a deep brown color like the bark of the trees that grew in the heated greenhouses. Back home, there was confusion in those eyes and fear and pain. But then the human saw the 3 cubs pressed against her body, and something changed in her expression. It was not the look of a predator spotting prey. It was something softer, something that Saya recognized, even though she had never seen it on an alien face before. It was gratitude. "It's okay," the human whispered in a language Saya did not understand. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Then her eyes closed again, and she slipped back into unconsciousness. But her hand moved slowly, almost unconsciously, until it came to rest on Saya's back. The touch was gentle and warm, and when the human's fingers began to stroke through Saya's fur, she felt a strange vibration start in her chest. She was purring. Saya had not purred since she was a tiny cub, nursing at her mother's side. It was considered childish and embarrassing for a Kurix of her age to purr, but she could not help it. The human's touch was so kind, so comforting, that her body responded without her permission. "Are you purring?" Tiru asked from the other side of the human, his voice full of disbelief. "No," Saya lied, her face growing hot with embarrassment. "You are definitely purring," Mika giggled. "I can feel the vibration from here." "Shut up," Saya muttered. But she did not move away from the human's hand. Hours passed, and the cubs took turns keeping watch at the cave entrance. The storm continued to howl outside, dumping more and more snow on the already frozen landscape. Saya worried about how they would find food if they were trapped here much longer. Worried about how they would keep the human alive if her condition got worse. Worried about 1,000 things that she could not control. But she stayed where she was, pressed against the human side, refusing to give up hope. In the darkest part of the night, the human's breathing changed. It became shallow and rapid, and her skin grew even colder than before. "Something is wrong," Tiru said, his ears flattening with alarm. "She's getting worse." Saya pressed her ear to the human's chest and heard the heartbeat stuttering and struggling. Her body is giving up. Saya realized with horror. "She's too cold. We are not warming her fast enough." "What do we do?" Mika cried, her small voice high with panic. Saya did not know what to do. She was just a cub. She did not have medical training. She did not have any supplies or equipment. All she had was her own small body and her desperate desire to keep this stranger alive. "Get closer," she ordered her cousins. "Press as tight as you can. We need to give her all the heat we have." The three cubs rearranged themselves. Covering as much of the human's body as they could reach, Mika spread herself across the human's chest like a living blanket while Tiru curled around the human's injured leg. Being careful not to touch the broken bones, Saya pressed her face against the human's neck, feeling the faint pulse beneath the cold skin. "Please," she whispered against that strange smooth skin. "Please do not die. Please keep fighting. You cannot give up now." She did not know if the human could hear her. She did not know if it would make any difference. But she kept talking anyway, pouring words into the darkness. Willing the human to hold on, she talked about her home and her family. And the things she loved. She talked about the snow. And the stars and the way the sunset looked from the top of the eastern ridge. She talked until her voice grew hoarse and her eyes grew heavy with exhaustion. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. The human's breathing steadied, and her heartbeat grew stronger, and the terrible chill began to fade from her skin. When Saya finally allowed herself to rest, her head pillowed on the human's shoulder. She felt the human's arm wrap around her and hold her close. It was a protective gesture, the kind of thing a mother would do for her cub, and in that moment, lost in the snow with a dying stranger, Saya understood something important. Kindness was not weakness. Compassion was not foolishness. These things were strength. The kind of strength that could cross the void between species and create bonds where none should exist. She fell asleep with that knowledge warm in her heart, surrounded by her cousins and embraced by a creature from another world. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cave, there was peace and there was warmth. And there was something that felt very much like hope, and far above them, hidden by the clouds, ships were already beginning their search for the lost human pilot and the three missing cubs, who had somehow found each other in the frozen darkness. Elder Karith had seen many terrible things in his long life. He had fought in the border conflicts against the humans when he was young and strong. He had watched friends die on battlefields. Far from home, he had buried 2 of his own children, lost to disease before they reached adulthood, but nothing had prepared him for the fear he felt now. Trudging through the snow at the head of a search party, looking for 3 cubs who had been missing since yesterday morning. One of those cubs was his grandniece Saya, his sister's granddaughter, a bright and curious child who asked too many questions and never seemed satisfied with the answers. He loved that cub more than he would ever admit to anyone. The thought of finding her frozen body in the snow made his old heart ache with a pain worse than any wound he had ever received in battle. "The storm is finally breaking," his second-in-command reported, pointing at the sky where patches of gray were giving way to pale blue. "We should be able to see better soon." "Good," Karith grunted. "Spread the searchers wider. I want every cave and crevice in this valley checked." They had been searching since the cubs were first reported missing, but the storm had made it impossible to cover much ground. Now, with the weather clearing, they had a chance. A small chance of finding the children before it was too late. Karith had seen the human shuttle crash yesterday, a streak of fire across the gray sky. The humans had contacted the Kurik settlement, asking for assistance in locating their missing pilot, and Karith had agreed to help once they found their own lost children. He did not particularly like humans, but he respected them. They were fierce warriors and loyal to their own kind. If one of their people was lost on this frozen world, they would not rest until she was found, just like the Kurreks would not rest until the cubs were safe. A young warrior came running through the snow, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Elder Kareth, we found the shuttle wreckage. It is at the base of the western cliffs. Any sign of the pilot? Kareth asked. No, sir. But there is blood in the snow leading away from the crash site, and small footprints. Many small footprints. Kareth felt his heart skip a beat. Small footprints that could mean cubs. Show me, he demanded. Already moving toward the young warrior, they reached the crash site quickly, and Kareth examined the scene with the trained eye of a veteran tracker. The shuttle was a burned-out wreck, half buried in snow and completely destroyed. A trail of dark red blood led away from the wreckage toward the cliffs, and mixed in with the blood trail were 3 sets of small paw prints. Cub prints. His cubs. They were here. Kareth breathed, hardly daring to believe it. The cubs found the human pilot. But why would they follow a bleeding alien into the storm instead of seeking shelter on their own? What could possibly motivate 3 frightened children to approach a creature they had been taught to fear? The answer came to him slowly, filling him with a complex mixture of pride and disbelief. They were trying to help. Those foolish, brave, impossible cubs had seen a wounded stranger and decided to help instead of running away. It was against everything the Kurreks culture taught. It was against all logic and good sense. And it was exactly the kind of thing Saya would do. Follow the trail, Kareth ordered. Quickly now, they tracked the prints through the snow until they reached a small cave in the cliff. Fresh snow had nearly hidden the entrance, but the tracks led directly inside. Kareth approached slowly, not wanting to startle whatever they might find within. He stepped into the darkness of the cave and stopped. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and he saw something he would remember for the rest of his life. A human woman lay against the back wall of the cave, her body wrapped in a thermal blanket that one of the cubs must have been wearing. Her face was pale, and her leg was clearly broken, but she was breathing. She was alive and curled around her. Pressed against her on all sides were 3 Kurreks cubs. Saya was tucked under one of the human's arms, her golden eyes blinking sleepily at the sudden intrusion. Tiru was curled around the human's legs, his body providing warmth to her injured limb, and little Mika was actually lying on top of the human's chest, rising and falling with each of the alien's breaths. Uncle Kareth, Saya said, her voice weak but filled with relief. You found us. Kareth could not speak. He just stared at the impossible scene before him. When he finally found his voice, it came out rough with emotion. What happened here? He managed to ask. She crashed. Saya explained. She was dying in the snow. We could not just leave her. We had to help. You stayed with her all night, Kareth said. You kept her alive. We kept each other alive, Tiru corrected, looking up at the elder with serious eyes. She was scared like us. She did not hurt us. She held us and kept us warm too. Kareth looked at the human's arm wrapped protectively around his grandniece, and something shifted in his understanding of the universe. He had fought these creatures. He had feared them and respected them and kept his distance from them. But here was one of them, barely alive, clinging to 3 Kurreks cubs as if they were her own children. And here were 3 cubs, defying everything their culture had taught them, refusing to abandon a stranger in need. She is hurt, Saya said, her voice taking on an urgent edge. Her leg is broken, and she lost a lot of blood. You have to help her now. It was not a request. It was a demand. His 6-cycle-old grandniece was demanding that he save the life of an alien creature, and Kareth realized, with something like wonder, that he was going to do exactly that, bring the medical kit. He ordered without taking his eyes off the scene before him. And contact the human vessel in orbit. Tell them we have found their pilot. Tell them she is injured but alive. He moved into the cave and knelt beside the human, his old knees protesting against the cold stone floor. The human's eyes fluttered open and focused on him with difficulty. He saw fear in those strained round eyes. Fear and confusion and pain. But when her gaze moved to the cubs still pressed against her body, the fear faded away. She looked at Kareth with an expression that needed no translation. Protect them. Those eyes said, whatever happens to me, protect them. Do not worry, human. Kareth said in the common trade language that most spacefaring species understood. Your young protectors are safe, and so are you. The human's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered something in her own language that Kareth did not understand. But he understood the gratitude behind the words, and he understood that something important had changed. Not just for him or for these cubs, but perhaps for both their species. The universe was a cold and dangerous place, but sometimes, in the darkest moments, you found warmth in the most unexpected places. Sometimes you found family where you least expected it. 6 weeks had passed since the rescue, and Commander Elara Chun stood in the great hall of the Kurik's High Council, her legs still wrapped in a regeneration brace that hummed softly as it worked to repair her shattered bones. The hall was enormous, carved from the living rock of the mountain, decorated with carvings that told the history of the Kurik's people going back thousands of cycles. Hundreds of Kuriks filled the viewing galleries, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Their whispered conversations creating a constant murmur that echoed off the stone walls. Elara had never felt more out of place in her entire life. She was the only human in a sea of feline aliens. Standing alone before the raised platform where the elder matriarch sat in judgment. The matriarch was ancient. Her gray fur shot through with white. Her amber eyes still sharp despite her advanced age. She had led the Kurik's people for longer than Elara had been alive, and her word was law among her kind. Commander Chun, the matriarch's voice filled the hall without any need for amplification. You have come before this council to formally thank the Kurik's people for saving your life. I have. Elder Matriarch, Elara replied, keeping her voice steady despite her nervousness. We accept your thanks, the matriarch said. But that is not why we have summoned you here today. Elara had suspected as much. The invitation to appear before the full council had seemed too formal for a simple expression of gratitude. Something bigger was happening here. Something that made the old matriarch's tail twitch with barely concealed agitation. We have questions, the matriarch continued. Questions that have troubled us since the night you were found in that cave. I will answer anything I can. Elder Matriarch. The ancient Kurix leaned forward on her seat, her eyes boring into Elara's with an intensity that was almost painful. Our cubs should have left you to die, she said, her words falling like stones into a still pond. It is what our culture teaches. It is what logic demands. It is what any rational being would do when faced with a dying stranger in the midst of a deadly storm. Elara said nothing, waiting for the question she knew was coming. Instead, they risked their own lives to save yours, the matriarch went on. They defied everything they had been taught, everything our society holds true. They chose compassion over survival and mercy over sense. Her tail lashed once. Sharply, what did you do to them? She demanded. What human trick or manipulation did you use to corrupt our children? Elara felt a spark of anger at the accusation, but she forced it down. These people had saved her life. They had taken her into their medical facilities and treated her wounds. They had contacted her ship and arranged her transport home. She owed them honesty. At the very least, nothing. she said simply. I did nothing to your cubs, Elder Matriarch, because I could do nothing. I was unconscious for most of that night, dying in the snow. I had no ability to manipulate or trick anyone. Then how do you explain their behavior? The matriarch pressed Alara took a deep breath and thought carefully about her answer. This was not just a conversation between two individuals. This was a moment that could shape the relationship between two species for generations. To come on my world, she began slowly. We have a word for what your cubs did that night. We call it compassion. She paused to let the translation devices do their work, making sure everyone in the hall can understand her. Compassion means helping others, not because it benefits us, but because they need help. It means reaching out to someone who is suffering, even when it costs us something, even when it is dangerous, even when the logical choice would be to walk away. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. We have no such concept in Karik's culture. We help those who can help us in return. We protect the strong because the strong protect our people. The weak are a burden, and nature teaches us that burdens must be shed with respect. Elder Matriarch, I do not think that is entirely true. A murmur ran through the hall at Alara's bold statement, and she saw several council members shift uncomfortably. In their seats, the matriarch's tail twitched again, but she gestured for Alara to continue. Your cubs had never met me before that night, Alara said. They had no reason to expect anything in return for helping me. They were children, frightened and lost in a storm. And yet when they saw someone suffering, they could not walk away. She looked around the great hall, meeting the glowing eyes of the Kariks who watched her. That tells me that compassion is not a human invention. It is not something we taught your cubs or tricked them into feeling. It is something that existed in them already. Something that is perhaps natural to all thinking beings who have the capacity to understand another's pain. She turned back to the matriarch. Your cubs did not save me despite being Kariks, she said firmly. They saved me because they are Kariks, because whatever your culture may teach, the hearts of your children know what is right. The matriarch was silent for a long moment. The entire hall held its breath, waiting to see how the ancient leader would respond to such a direct challenge to Karik's cultural beliefs. Finally, the matriarch spoke. You were saying that we have been wrong, she said, her voice neutral, that our teachings about the weak and the strong have been mistaken. I am saying that perhaps there is more than one kind of strength. Alara replied. The strength to fight and survive is valuable. I would never deny that. But there is also strength in kindness, strength in compassion, strength in choosing to help others, even when it is hard. She thought of Maya, her daughter back on Earth, and felt tears prick at her eyes. 3 cubs showed me that strength in the darkest night of my life, she said, a voice thick with emotion. They had nothing to gain and everything to lose, and they helped me anyway. If that is not strength, then I do not know what strength is. The matriarch studied her for a long time, those ancient amber eyes seeing more than Alara would have liked then. Slowly, the old Kariks nodded. Perhaps, she said, her voice quiet enough that only those closest could hear. Perhaps we have underestimated both our children and your kind. She raised her voice to address the full council. This matter will require much thought and discussion. For now, I declare this hearing concluded. As Alara turned to leave, she saw 3 small figures pushing through the crowd toward her. Saya reached her first, her golden eyes bright with joy, followed closely by Tiru and little Mika. You came back, Saya said, pressing her head against Alara's hand in the Karik's gesture of affection. I promised I would, Alara replied, kneeling down to be at eye level with the cubs, despite the pain in her healing leg. And humans always keep their promises to family. Family, Mika repeated, her small voice full of wonder. Are we family now? Alara gathered all 3 cubs into her arms, holding them close against her chest, feeling their warmth and their purring vibrating against her heart. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You refused to leave me alone in the dark. That makes us family. That makes us connected forever, no matter how far apart we might be." Years later, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of a new era between humans and Kurix, the cultural exchange program, the joint exploration missions, the treaties of friendship and cooperation. All of it grew from the seeds planted on that frozen night when 3 cubs refused to let a stranger die. And in embassies and starships across the galaxy, humans in Kurix would keep small photographs near their workstations. Pictures of cubs and children, pictures of families that crossed the boundaries of species, and world pictures that proved what Alara had said in the Great Hall that day: compassion was not a human thing or a Kurix thing. It was a people thing. It was what made any species worth knowing, and it all started with 3 brave cubs who looked at a dying stranger and saw not an alien, not a threat, not a burden to be shed, but a person who needed help, and they refused to leave her side. The end.